Hey guys, welcome back to another edition of No Niche Zone, the podcast about everything. I'm your host, Priscilla Davies, and I am so happy to be back here with y'all. Thank you for having so much patience with me. I had to skip last week's episode because, y'all, when I tell you I have been going through it, February tore me the fuck up. February, I mean, February just ate me up. You know that clip of that lady who's like, I don't know what bit me, but I know I'm ate up. That's exactly how I feel. February turned me every which way but loose, y'all. And truly, I'm still in the process of dealing with things. I was sick, as I mentioned last week, which is why I had to cancel last week. But it's been part of a bigger issue. I'm pretty sure that something in my apartment is making me sick. And so I've been living out of a hotel for the last 2 freaking weeks, y'all. 2 freaking weeks. I'm still there. And I've been fighting with my management company. Literally just got an email this morning with them basically being like, oh, well, too bad for you. So, you know, I had to pull out my literary skills and I had to get the thumbs going. Okay. And I wrote back this long ass email detailing everything with dates and timestamps because yes, I'm that bitch. And I CC'd my sister-in-law who is an attorney. Okay. You know, she's an attorney in New Jersey. So I don't know how helpful that'll be. But I texted her and I was like, hey girl, I just CC'd you on this email to my management company. Like you can completely ignore it. I just don't want you to like be like, what the hell is this? She wrote back, I'll read it. So I've been going through it, y'all. I'm finally starting to feel better. I feel like whatever it is that's been affecting me, whether it's some kind of toxin, some chemical, some allergen, whatever's been affecting me, I feel like it was like it had built up in my system to the point that like, you know, I needed to be out of the space for multiple days in a row before I started feeling better. So I'm finally feeling so much better. I'm pretty much 100%, but I still have had to go back into my apartment to grab things here and there. And whatever is in there I'm so sensitive to now, or is so strong that literally, I will feel symptoms starting up again. I'll go back to my hotel room 20 minutes later. I'm like, here comes that little sore throat. Now I'm feeling tired again for no freaking reason. It has just been a trip, y'all. So I just want to say thank you for your patience with me. Technically, I probably shouldn't even be here today. I should probably just be focusing because now I'm also looking for a new place because I don't know what's in my apartment. My management company's not being cooperative. And it's so crazy. Like, I love my apartment, y'all. I live in a cute 1-bedroom loft. I have a beautiful view of the Hollywood Hills. And on the other side, I have a view of I think they're the San Gabriel Mountains. And I love my apartment. I'm in a great neighborhood, walking distance to all the hot spots, walking distance to the metro. So, you know, I had no intentions of moving. And I went from literally like living my best life, not having it like totally fine, to being sick for 3 weeks, to getting so sick that I had to go to the urgent care twice, y'all. I did all the tests, COVID, flu, strep, bacterial tests for my throat. Everything came back negative, thankfully. I did blood work. That came back normally. Like, I've been going freaking through it. And in addition to all of that, I had to now suddenly start like scrambling to find a new apartment. I still don't have a new place. I'm still looking. So keep me in your prayers, guys. Keep me in your positive thoughts if you're a manifester, and send me some good vibes because I need to get a new place and I need to get the hell out of this apartment that I love but is literally killing me, like no joke. So again, thank you so much for your patience. And I'm so happy to be back with you guys. And hopefully next episode, when I come back, I can tell you that I found a new apartment. I'm on my way out, and you know, it's up and on from here. With that being said, let's jump into the show, shall we? All right, folks. So, last episode, I talked about how Black people need to stay inside, stay off the streets, stay out of them protests, keep ourselves safe. Them protests are not our business. Them Protests are white folks' business, and that we need to keep ourselves safe and focus on ourselves and be resting during this time. And I gotta say, when I posted this, I got a lot of positive feedback. I mean, I was so happy to see that all of us Black people, most of us Black people, the vast majority of us are on the same page when it comes to this. It's like psychically, intuitively, we're all tapping into the same energy of don't go out in them streets. And I was so happy about that, to see all those responses. But I also got some responses from Black people who were like, no, we can't just be at home resting. What happens when they come for us? We're going to be next in line. What would our ancestors say? This is not what Harriet and all them Yeah. Okay. And so I wanted to address some of those points and issues and go into more detail about exactly what I mean when I say Black people stay the hell home. Okay. Because it's deeper than just staying the hell home. And I also think it's important for Black people, especially who are hesitant about staying home, to understand like the big picture of what exactly I'm saying and what exactly is going on in our country right now. So, first and foremost, what we're seeing right now, for lack of a better word, is a biblical event. Okay? This is a predestined event. We are witnessing an inevitability based on the origins of this country, which is genocide of the indigenous people, which is human trafficking, labor trafficking, sex trafficking of Africans, and also the indigenous people here, and all of the ills that this country was built on. We are seeing the inevitable outcome of building a country on a rotten foundation. Okay? We are seeing the inevitable outcome of empire. If anybody knows anything about empires usually only last 250 years. And guess what? Guess what, y'all? If you do the mathematics, from 1776 to 2025, you guessed it, it's 250 years. Okay? So we are due for a reckoning based on just the fact that empire is guaranteed almost to fail after 250 years. And why is that? That's because empire is not for the people. Empire is for the emperors. Are you picking up what I'm putting down? Empire is not created in service of the people. It's not created in service of the society, in service of the community. It's created in service of the 1%, of the emperors, of the wealthy, in our case, of the capitalists, okay? That is what empire is created for. And so it is inevitable that empires never last more than 250 years because they have faulty premises, faulty foundations, and eventually the people get sick and tired and they rise up. And they rise up like the day I rise up. Okay. I love that song. But the people inevitably rise up because, again, empire is not for the people. It's for the emperors. And eventually people wake up and they get sick and tired of being exploited, used and abused in order to support the tiny 1% and even 0.1%. Okay? That's what we're seeing here with these billionaires taking over our government. The 0.1%. Not even the 1%, but also the 1%. I'll even go as far as to say the top 5%. Okay? Because the gap between the top 5%, the top 1%, and the rest of us is a canyon. Okay? It is miles and miles and miles. It is a huge distance, right? So eventually what happens after 250 years is the people wake up, they rise up, and everything goes to hell. Everything goes to hell. Also because empire is all about ceaseless expansion. Right? Expansion. Eventually, when you live in a finite planet, which is what we live in, right? This country, this planet is finite, right? You can only expand so far until eventually there's nowhere to expand anymore. And as a result, empire will fall. Because there's nowhere else to go. And the people that you continuously try to absorb into your empire, again, they too will rise up. And eventually you're spread so thin that It's inevitable that you will fail. And so what we are witnessing right now is the fall of the empire of the United States of America. That is, like I said, this is something biblical. This is something out of our hands. This is an inevitability that we cannot stop. We can't. Because the system, the empire itself is a faulty system of governance. Okay? That's number one. Number two, you have to add in racism, white delusion, aka white supremacy, as they say, in this country. You have to factor that in as well. That is another aspect of the faulty, crumbling foundation that this country was built on. It was built on the genocide of indigenous peoples here. It was built on racism and enslavement of Africans, Black people, to create an economy that is built on literally blood and forced labor. Okay? And the thing about white supremacy in this country and in this world, because it's infected the whole entire planet, let's be clear about that. But the thing about the white delusion, white supremacy, is that until this country faces the truth of white supremacy, the history of white supremacy, and most importantly, atones for that, what we're witnessing is going to be an inevitability. The fall of the country is going to be an inevitability. White supremacy is a cancer that runs through the veins of this country, and it is ruining this country from the inside out. These Trump supporters, they knew that electing Trump was not going to be good for any of us. They knew that, but it was a calculated gamble that they took because they were most invested in white supremacy. You know, a lot of people say, oh, these Trump supporters are so dumb. They're so uninformed. And yeah, sure, there's some people who aren't informed. There are some people who are, you know, they're not with it, cognitively. Sure, those people exist. And, you know, there's so many people that say, oh, you know, Republicans and Trump supporters, they always vote against their interests. No, they don't. What you don't realize is their top number one priority is maintaining and upholding the system of white supremacy. That is their number one priority over everything. And so because of that, they're willing to throw everything else away, including the whole entire country. Have you ever heard of the concept of drained pool politics? For those who haven't heard of drained pool politics, it's what happened in the South after the civil rights movement, when desegregation happened, when they were forced to desegregate in the South. You know what white people did? Rather than sharing their pools with Black people and non-white people because they were forced to legally after desegregation, they decided to drain the pools and fill them in with cement. They would rather have no pools at all than to share them with Black people. This is the mentality of the parents and grandparents and great-grandparents of today's current Trump supporters. This is the mentality. They were willing to drain the pools just so they wouldn't have to share it. People talk about, why can't we ever get universal health care in this country? It's because they don't want non-white people to have access to universal health care. They would rather suffer with high-ass insurance premiums, high-ass emergency room bills, high-ass ambulance ride bills, high-ass prescription drug prices. They would rather deal with that than to have universal health care, knowing that Black people, non-white people, and, oh, God forbid, the undocumented immigrants have access to that as well. That's why. Everybody says, why can't we be like Sweden and all those Norwegian countries, the Scandinavian countries that have universal health care? They have this excellent quality of living. Do you know what else they have? Homogenous societies. All white societies, y'all. That's why they're willing to do that. They're willing to take care of their people because all their people is white. But you're starting to see the tides turn. Why? Because of immigration. You're starting to see the tides turn in all of those countries. Because once again, white supremacy, white delusion keeps white people from serving the community, serving the society if the society has black and brown folks in it. And so that's what we're witnessing, folks. That's what we're witnessing in this country. And so that's why these Trump supporters were willing to sacrifice their precious eggs. Now eggs are what, $8, $9 a dozen? That's insane when you think about it. That's why they were willing to sacrifice healthcare. That's why they're willing to sacrifice their jobs, even though now some of them are like, oh, damn, I didn't realize I was going to be a target. That's why they're willing to sacrifice the economy. Trump is going to send us into the toilet with this economy. And that's why they're willing to sacrifice all of that. Why? Because their number one top priority is upholding white supremacy. They are terrified to give up the benefits that white people get in a white supremacist society. And so they're willing to throw it all to hell. And that's what we're witnessing here, folks. So my black brothers and sisters, when I tell you to stay home, stay out of it, it's partly because this, where we are today, we will never escape this until these white people deal with white supremacy and atone for the racism and the genocide that they built this country on. You know, this all started in 1492 when white people came to this country and genocided their way across the land, right? But another major turning point for this country was after the Civil War. Part of what we're seeing now is a result of the fact that this country never properly dealt with the Confederacy. You hear me? Instead of throwing the traitors, because that's what the Confederacy was, right? They were treasonists, traitors. Instead of throwing their asses in jail, instead of sending them up to see the big guy in the sky as treasonists should be dealt with, instead of doing that, you know what the Union did? They gave a smack on the wrist of their Southern cousins and said, okay, as long as you guys promise not to be bad in the future, you're okay with us. You're fine. And so what happened? Did the Confederacy die? No, they're still out here flying their battle flag. What happened? That Confederacy, they sat and they waited patiently. They took over the Republican Party. And every year, every election, they kept chipping and chipping and chipping away at the rights of non-white people in this country, the rights of women in this country, the rights of immigrants in this country. They kept chipping and chipping away until today, 2025, they finally, after all of these years, what's that, 100? Is that almost 200 years later, 160 something years later, they finally got their man, Donald Trump, and all of the MAGA Republicans who support that maniac. Okay? The Confederacy never died. It just laid in wait until it could have its opportunity to rise again. And now we're seeing it. We're seeing it with the neo-Nazis who went into Ohio, a predominantly black community in Ohio, and tried to protest and had to get run out by the black community. We're seeing it in the way some of these white people are suddenly letting their racist freak flag fly. You notice? Have you noticed since Trump got elected again? Have you noticed that suddenly they're bolder and more emboldened in their racism? It's because the Confederacy never died. They've always been here just waiting for their opportunity to pop out and show something. Okay? And because this country never dealt with them properly, never punished them, they not only that, but they had Reconstruction. And then what did they do? In 15 minutes, they flipped Reconstruction upside down and said, never mind. They actually had a chance with Reconstruction. They actually had a chance. With 40 acres and a mule, they actually had a chance to do right, to actually atone for what they did in this country. And they couldn't even last 15 minutes before they flipped it over and went right back to their nonsense and got and created Jim Crow. And what did the North do? The supposedly civilized North, the liberals, what did they do? Nothing. But watch and say, hey, that's below the Mason-Dixon line. It'll never get up here. And now look at us, 160 some odd years later. Now look at us. We are, and when I say we, let me not say we, because it ain't me. It ain't me and my peoples. My peoples. It's Caucasians from the Caucasus Mountains. White people are paying the piper. That's what we're seeing right here. When I say that what's going on is a biblical event, that's part of what I mean. White people are paying the piper for never having dealt with the original sin of this country of racism and genocide of the indigenous people. Never dealing with the Confederacy the way the Confederacy should have been dealt with. Never atoning. Where's the reparations? Anybody? Sir in the back with the green shirt, where's the reparations? No, nowhere. Nowhere to be found. They never atoned. And so as a result, what we're seeing is an inevitability. So when I say Black people stay the hell home, this isn't our fight, this is what I mean by that. What we are seeing is the inevitable consequences of the actions of white people in this country. The actions of white people, white people's parents, white people's grandparents, their great-grandparents, going all the way back to the inception of this country and all the way back to the end of the Civil War. We cannot save white people from themselves, Black folks. We can't do that. I want you to envision this like a microcosm. Sometimes it's hard to understand things when it's a big picture, when you're seeing it macrocosmically, right? On the scale of the whole entire country. Sometimes it's hard to see it. So let's reduce it down to the microcosm, to interpersonal relationships, okay? If you have a loved one who is fighting an addiction, right? You can't save them. They have to want to save themselves. They have to want to stop, to deal with their addiction. They have to want to fight the addiction. They have to want to go to rehab. You can't force them to go to rehab. You can't force them to face their addiction, to admit that they have an addiction and then actually do something about it. You can't force them, right? We know this. We all remember, what was that TV show? Intervention, remember? Okay. You can't force people to do anything. All you can do is wait for them to realize that they have a problem, right? The first step to solving a problem is what? Admitting that you have one. So if you're not admitting that you have a problem, you're not going to do anything to change it. And if you have an addiction, you will not make the effort to go to rehab to fix it. And you cannot be forced to. You cannot force someone to go to rehab to solve their addictions. And this country, white people have an addiction to white supremacy. It is an addiction, y'all. Y'all got to think about racism and white supremacy, white delusion. Y'all have to think about racism as an addiction. Think about it like alcoholism, right? No matter how many years sober you have, no matter how many AA meetings you've been to, it doesn't matter. You still are an alcoholic and you still have to behave as such. You can't be like, oh, I'm fixed, I'm cured, I'm good. Because the moment you do that, you slip right back into the alcoholism. You at least put yourself in jeopardy of doing so. And that's the same thing as racism. You know, white people in America, they're like, oh, I'm not racist. You know, I read some Bell Hooks books. I read a couple of books, you know, on white privilege. You know, I don't see blue, green, black, whatever, right? You hear this from white people, but it's like, white folk, that's not how racism works. Racism is embedded into the fabric of this society. If black people have to deal with our own internalized racism as black people, y'all got a lot of nerve to say that you're not racist and you have no race. You don't have a racist bone in your body. You got to treat it like alcoholism, like addiction. You are never not an alcoholic. You are never not an addict, and you have to treat it as such so that you are vigilant against it. You are vigilant against being being racist. And the same thing applies to going to rehab or fixing the situation, addressing the racism. I can't force you to go to rehab. You got to want to do it yourself. And black people, we can't force white people to go to racism rehab. They got to want to do it themselves. And until they do it, they will sacrifice everything on the altar of white supremacy, as we're seeing them do right now with the country, with Donald Trump. So when I say black folks, stay home, stay safe, that's another thing that I mean. We can't save them. They have to want to be saved, and they don't want to. And just like on a microcosmic level, you can't force someone to go into rehab. The person has to want to do it, because if you force them, guess what happens? They're going to do it begrudgingly. They'll go through the course begrudgingly. And then as soon as they get out, more than likely, they'll relapse. And it's the same thing with white people in this country when it comes to racism. We can't force them to face their racism and address it, black people. We can't do that. They have to want to do that. You can see the difference in the people who are genuinely, the white people who are genuinely anti-racist and are genuinely addressing their racism, and the white people who don't even believe they have a racist bone in their body. You can see the difference. And no human being can force another human being to do anything, even if you do it at gunpoint. They may go through the actions, they may do the work, do the actions, but the internal change won't be there. And so we have to acknowledge that. We have to recognize that. Okay? And so that's another reason why I'm saying, black folk, stay home. Stay out of them streets. Stop putting your bodies on the line to try to change the hearts and minds of white people, to try to prevent them from doing what the hell white peopling, as they say. We can no longer put ourselves on the front line. We've tried it. We done got, the dogs sicked on us. We done got the water cannons sicked on us. We done got the rubber bullets. We've been disappeared. We've been mysteriously killed. Oh my God, we've experienced all of that. And guess what? They're still doing the same shit that their grandparents and their forefathers before them have been doing. So stay the hell out of them streets, black people. This is not our work to be done. This is not our business. This is white folk business. Just like an addict, getting rehab is an addict's business. It's not our business. The addict has to do it. It's the same thing that's happening here. Okay? And let me be clear. I'm not saying that we should just sit at home and do nothing and chill and eat popcorn and do nothing. That's not what I'm saying, okay? I'm saying stay off the front lines. I'm saying stay out of the streets. I'm saying don't put yourself out there to be victimized, because you know exactly who them police and riot police are going to target when we're out there. Like I said in the previous episode, have y'all noticed they've been protesting across the country? Look up the 50 501 protests that have been happening all over this country. Look them up. No black people out there. And guess what? They've miraculously been violent, barely any, no violence. Okay. Very few people being arrested. Where the rubber bullets at? Where's the tear gas? Where's the militarized tanks in the street? Nowhere. Where are the random quote random bricks that happen to just be out there that people use to bust up them windows? Where are they? Nowhere. You know why? Because our Negro asses are not out there. And as I said earlier in the episode, you know, white people can treat other white people right. They're not going to treat us right. And even to this day, even today, they starting to act funny with their own white people. Did you see that video of that white woman getting dragged out like a dog of that town hall meeting by 3 men in unidentified uniforms? Y'all see that video of a white woman? They dragged her out, shoes flinging everywhere. They dragged her the hell out. Secret police. Literally, the mayor, not the mayor, the sheriff of the town, who, by the way, in the clip, he calls these men over to help him remove her, but then later says, I don't know where these guys came from. Sus. But the sheriff, these unmarked secret policemen, who, by the way, are from Lear Security, if you want to look it up. Lear Security dragged this white woman out like a dog. You look at the pictures, it looks like, I'm not even gonna say what it looks like. Okay. The initials are GR. It looks like a GR is about to go down. You can figure out what that stands for. Okay. So if this is how they treating their own white women who are stepping out of line because she was supposedly heckling at this town hall, imagine what the hell they're going to do to our asses, black people. Stay your ass home. Stay your ass safe. And again, I'm not saying just stay home and mind your business. And I mean, I am saying mind your business, but I'm not just saying stay home and pretend like, no. Stay informed. Stay informed. Support black businesses. We're still doing the blackcott, y'all. We're still blackcotting, if you will. We're still boycotting all of these companies, all of these businesses out here, especially the ones who are rolling back DEI initiatives. We're still boycotting them. And we are putting our 1.3 trillion black ass dollars into black businesses, black service providers, and black motherfucking pockets, okay? When I say stay home, I'm also saying make sure you're putting your money into black businesses and to black companies and black service providers. And if you need some resources, check out any of my check out my TikTok page, check out my all of the social media pages, check out our YouTube, No Niche Zone Pod. And I have given multiple black resources for the blackcott. So if your question is, well, where can I find them? We got it for you. Go check them out. All right. So we need to ensure that we are continuing to boycott. We are using our money because, as I said previously, empire only speaks money and violence, and we staying out of the violence. So we're using our money. Okay. And also we need to be building community with each other. Okay, we need to be building community with each other, mutual aid with each other. We need to be protecting our communities as well, y'all. No one is saying sit down and be a sitting duck and wait for them to show up at your door next. No one is saying that. I'm saying get your mind right, get prepared, make sure you're using your money to protest. That's how we need to be protesting with our finances. And I'm saying stay off the streets, stay out of the streets, stop being human shields and cannon fodder for these white people who don't give a damn about you and are more than willing to let you be the human shields for them to continue to uphold their white supremacist, white delusion society. Okay? And to the black people out there who are, complaining, especially in my comments and saying, no, we need to get out there. This is a horrible message. There was one person who wrote a comment on one of my posts, and I thought it just really encapsulated, it was kind of an eye opener on top of it, I gotta say. And it was in regard to these people, our black brothers and sisters who are out here telling us to get up in these streets. No, we need to get out there. We need to protest. And this is what this person said. I'm not going to say their name because, maybe they don't want to be identified. But this is what they said, quote, Harriet Tubman had to leave so many of us behind, and we see why. These supposedly black folks who are urging us to fight in the streets are definitely working with the ops and must believe that blacks are inherently stupid. If white folks can turn it up on January 6th and live, why can't they turn it up now for their rights? Why try to convince us to do it instead? Ooh, child. I'm making spaghetti tonight for my family and having a brunch date tomorrow with my girls. Maybe I might go see Captain America, and I don't even like Anthony. End quote. When I read this, it's like a light bulb went off, and I said, oh, wait a minute. You might could be right. You might be right, girl. And it just was an eye opener. I tend to take people at face value, and I tend to take, I'm not assuming that people are out here being shady, but this was such a poignant point to me. And so black people, when you see supposedly, quote, black people in the comments being like, no, we need to be out there fighting. And I'm sure some of them are saying that in good faith. I'm sure some of them are. But remember, the ops is out. Okay? Remember, the Black Panthers, they had plans. The CIA operatives were up in the Black Panthers. They were up in all of the civil rights movements, okay? They were up in the Nation of Islam, okay? So remember, so be careful, and be discerning when you read some of these comments. And I gotta say, ever since I read this comment, anytime a so-called black person is in my comments saying, no, we need to be out on the streets, I just think, is you an op? Is you an op? Are you working for them? Willing to put your brothers and sisters in harm's way and your siblings, your non-binary siblings in harm's way? Think about it, y'all. Think about it. All right, y'all, let's get into this next little bit. Okay, so I had seen this TikTok a little while back, and I was like just blown away by it. And not only because it was poignant, but also because it was tapping into a thought that I had as well, but from a different angle. So I'm going to play it and we'll talk about it. This clip is from a TikToker named Nena Stella, spelled Nnenna Stella. And I follow her. I love her content. And listen to what she had to say.
When you read sacred text or anything that was written a long time ago, consider, 1, it was written by men. 2, the audience that they imagined would be reading it were also men. The mistake we've done as women is we read these sacred texts and we believe that it is inclusive of us. And when someone is being told to do something, we think it also applies to us. Here's an example. In some sacred texts, like the Bible, it talks about the flesh being weak, right? And to guard yourself against lust and desire. Now, as a woman, do you understand that that message was likely not specifically for you? That message was written by men for other men. So what has happened over time is, as women read these sacred texts in these books, we think it is the whole of humanity. But the truth is, they weren't thinking about you when they wrote these books. Another example, a lot of sacred texts will say, don't be so selfish, be selfless, be giving. Women are already that way. You don't need to be more selfless. You don't need to give more. You are already giving more than you should. That was written for men. So as you continue to read these books, reconsider, was this message originally intended for me, or was it intended for men? And now, because we live in this inclusive and equal world, I'm reading this and I'm thinking it's telling me how to be, but I am already this way. And this was written for my reproductive counterpart. How might that liberate you in the way you live your life?
Ooh, wee. Did y'all hear what Nana Stella said? Oh man, this, when I heard this, I mean, all the light bulbs went off. I was like, God damn, bitch, you is right. You is right. Think about it. You know, we're living by these codes of conduct, you know, especially when it comes to like religious people, and not even religious people, right? Like there's a lot of people who look to religious texts like the Bible and other religious texts as guidance in this world, whether they're religious or not, right? And, you know, it's interwoven into our country and our rules and laws as well, right? And it's just, it's so interesting. You know, she did such a great job of articulating this idea that who was this intended for when it was written? Who was this rule book? Who was these ideas? Who was, for example, the Bible, etc.? Who were these rules and laws and ideas? Who was the intended audience? And the fact that we as women assume that the intended audience was the swath of humanity, all of humanity, when in reality, we were not considered. We were an afterthought. Let's keep it real. How often do men think about women when they do anything? Let's keep it motherfucking real, okay? How often do men consider women when they're doing anything? They don't think about us, especially in this patriarchal society that we live in. Right? When the patriarchs wrote the Bible, put it together, when the patriarchs wrote the laws of the land, they weren't thinking about us. When they came up with all of these, you know, these life lessons and rules and regulations for comporting ourselves as human beings, they weren't thinking about us. They were men talking to other men. And we got swept up in that, thinking that they're talking about us because they're talking about, quote, all of humanity, right? All men are created equally, right? When they're saying men, who they talking about? They talking about humans, right? They act like they're talking about everybody, but the truth is they're really talking about men because they're not considering us. They're not thinking about us. And so just like she says, like, what would that do? How would that liberate you as women to consider that maybe all of these prescriptions and ideas and thoughts and rules and regulations were never meant for us? Like she said, you know, they talk about, you know, being mindful of being lustful. Are we the lustful ones? No. Are we the ones that have no control over our sexual impulses? No. Are we the ones out here graping, as they say, graping children, animals, and dead people? No. So was this really designed for us? Same thing with regard to being selfless and being giving. Like she said, we already naturally are that way. And you can say that that's nature versus nurture. And even if it is nurture, we were conditioned and socialized to be that way. So we already are that way. So when it says to be giving and selfless, it's like we already are. So we draining ourselves. And you see that reflected in the society. Women are drained in this society, especially mothers and wives. Drained because we're giving more than we have because we are thinking, oh, well, the Bible says this and the Quran says this and, you know, and this philosopher said this. They weren't thinking about us. They were talking to other men. It was men talking to other men. There's another creator, she also addressed this. And when I saw it, I was like, I love her take on this as well.
Jesus and Buddha and all of them, all of their teachings were made for men. They experienced life through a male vessel. To be more compassionate, to be more sweet, to be more selfless. Yes, to be more like women, to balance their feminine energies. Those messagings, those are for men. Women, we have to have our own spiritual practices. We have to have our own stuff. Okay, we're already naturally empathetic and passionate and selfless. We got to go the opposite direction in order to balance our masculine or feminine energies. We have to understand how to set boundaries. We have to understand how to be selfish, how to put our needs before anybody else's, because an empty cup ain't gonna fill up nobody's. This is the power of divine feminine energy. It is divine once you learn how to balance your masculine and your feminine energies. This is when you step into your goddess era. Okay? It's nice to be compassionate and sweet, but then you got to stomp out that people pleaser part of you, because now you're being used and abused. Step into your goddess era by being more selfish, putting yourself first, prioritizing your own needs. Self-care is the best care.
And that was Secrets of the Siren. If you want to find them, you can find them online at TikTok at Secrets of the Siren. Okay. I love her take on this too. The balancing of our masculine and our feminine energies, because as everything in this universe, we exist in duality. We have both the masculine and the feminine, the go and the come, the pull and the push, the negative and the positive, the light and the dark. These are all just words for the two energies that exist in this universe, right? It's just the difference between attraction and repulsion, right? Go out and get it, sit back and receive the feminine and the masculine energies. And I love how she talks about how, that these teachers came to us in male vessels. I love that she talked about that the Buddha, that Jesus, all of these folks came to us in male vessels. I love that she broke that down, because it's so true. It's like, yeah, if you think, listen, you can believe what you want to believe. I'm just going to rock with this and just rock with me and take what you will and take what you don't. But, if the consciousness that decided to incarnate into Jesus, into the Buddha, into these philosophers, they chose a male vessel in a patriarchal society. That's not by accident, right? They chose to incarnate into a male vessel. Why? So they could be an example for what? Males in a overly masculine, hyper masculine, toxic masculinity society, the patriarchy that we have now and that has existed since biblical times. And that's not by accident, that's by design. And so they chose to come in this male vessel, and they chose to do that so that they could be an example for males and so they could teach males. And again, in the patriarchy, they wasn't thinking about us, ladies. We're an afterthought. They don't give a damn about us. They were talking to, when they're saying we human beings need to be, they were talking to other men. It's not an accident or coincidence that all of Jesus's disciples, most of them, the vast majority of them are men. It wasn't all, but the vast majority of them. It's not a mistake. And then, we don't have time to get into Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of Jesus, because there's so much more to it. Maybe we'll get into it in another episode. But, there's a lot out there that says that Mary Magdalene and Mary, his mother, were actually his equals in terms of being his, quote, disciples. Okay. So think about that. Think about what she said in terms of like, just like what the previous person said, Nana Stella, that, this idea that we have to be selfless in giving. We already are. And like Secrets of the Siren said, you can't fill anything up from an empty cup. So if we're wearing ourselves down so much that we're emptying our cup, how can we now fill up other people's cups? But guess who got the full cups in society? Guess who got the full cups in society? Right? Because in a patriarchal society, the patriarchy focuses on filling up males' cups, filling up the cup of men at the expense of women and children and animals and the environment. So I want us as women to reconsider all of these life lessons, all of these, prescriptions for life, these sacred texts, all of these, these what do you call it? Like sayings that we have about, the right way to live, and question whether or not those were intended for us women, whether they were intended for us, if we were the intended audience. And if we weren't the intended audience, what does that mean moving forward, and how would that change things? And this reminded me, when I heard these two folks speaking on this, it reminded me of my own awareness that I had come to about the notion of human nature. In our society, we always hear about human nature and how human nature is so bad, it's so negative. Of course we have wars, that's human nature. Of course we have racism and discrimination, that's human nature. Of course we have all of these problems. That's human nature. And one day I woke up and I was like, is it human nature or is it male nature? Is it white male nature, especially considering the white supremacist society that we live in today, white delusion? Okay? One day I just woke up and I was like, wait a minute, is this really human nature? Because in my experience, when I'm engaging with people out in the streets in my daily life, I find most people to be pretty fucking decent people. Right? And so I had that epiphany and that awakening that, whenever we're talking about human nature, it's like the patriarchy took over the concept of human, right? They projected male traits onto humanity as if to say, this is how everybody is. And it's like, this is not how everybody is. This is how males are. White males in the modern era. And you have projected the worst of their behaviors, the worst of their nature onto humanity to excuse away your bad behavior. Are we really warmongering people, or is that just male behavior who believe, males in the patriarchy who believe in hierarchy and conquering and the strong will survive? Survival of the fittest. So it's something that I want us as women, as femmes, as people who don't identify as male, it's something that I want us to consider and to really think about. Are all of these ideas, were they intended for us? Is it really human nature or is it male nature? Are we really the intended audience for the Bible and for all of these religious texts and for all of these philosophical ideas about humanity? Are we really the intended? Or were men the intended audience and target? And if so, how do you move forward? How will that liberate you as a woman moving forward? And speaking of religious texts and the fact that, not everything was intended for men, or not everything was intended for everybody. Watching these also reminded me of this video that I saw from a TikToker named Arturntoyin, ARETURNTOYIN. And she was talking about the female Buddhas. Did you know that there are female Buddhas? Did you know that? We're all familiar with the Buddha. First of all, did you even know there's more than one Buddha? Okay. We are all familiar with the Buddha of our epoch. What's his name? Siddhartha Gautama, right? We're all familiar with Siddhartha, the Buddha, but he is the Buddha of our epoch, of our era. But there were other Buddhas in the past. And little did I know there were female Buddhas, y'all. Did you know that? And it's so interesting because this creator, she breaks down the difference between female Buddhas versus male Buddhas. And it is fascinating. And basically, through the masculine path, the male Buddhas, right, we learn to rise above our suffering by following the path of renunciation, right? Letting everything go, right? Siddhartha, he gave up his life as a prince to go be an ascetic in the woods and to live in nature and to beg for food, right? That was the path towards enlightenment through the male path, right? Through the male Buddha. But interestingly enough, the female Buddhas, their path to enlightenment, many of them was different. And they took the path of transformation, which is considered to be a more feminine way of transcending the roots of your emotions and your suffering. And this path, instead of I don't want to say ignoring, but that's the best word that's coming to mind right now. Instead of ignoring your feelings, because that is essentially what the masculine path of Buddhism, the path of the Buddha Siddhartha that we are all familiar with, that is, how he achieved enlightenment, and how they teach achieving enlightenment is by, ignoring your feelings, rising above your feelings, ignoring them, and not being reactive to your feelings, and to renounce worldly things, and eventually you will reach enlightenment. However, the female way of the female path that these female Buddhas took was not renouncing your feelings, renouncing the world, but actually acknowledging your emotions, your traumas, and your suffering, and having wisdom and compassion for them. Okay? Not judging yourself because you can't just let go of those negative feelings, right? And those negative thoughts, right? To have wisdom and compassion for them, which allows them to transform within yourself. Ain't that something? So instead of avoiding feelings, instead of avoiding things that trigger us, it's instead of avoiding the female Buddhas and the female or feminine path to enlightenment in Buddhism is to go through the emotions, to feel the emotions. I mean, don't this speak to you, ladies? Don't this speak to you? It's to feel the emotions and in doing so and having compassion for the emotions and having compassion for yourself and wisdom for yourself with regard to those emotions to transmute those emotions into the path towards enlightenment. Isn't that something else? And if you want to look up some of these female Buddhas, Artun Toyin, she listed 3: Kuan Yin, Green Tara, and Matsu. Matsu spelled M-A-Z-U, Kuan Yin, K-U-A-N, and Yin, Y-N, and Green Tara. These are 3 female Buddhas. If you want to do some research and look into them, look them up. And I think this is so powerful, and it speaks to like what we're talking about here in terms of, all of these religious texts. Who were the intended audience of these religious texts? Was it women, or was it males speaking to other males and guiding other males? And if so, should we as women be following these paths, or should we as women be following different paths? For example, like the path of the female Buddhas. So I encourage you to check that out. And I thought it was just such an enlightening thing, and I wanted to share that with y'all. And folks, with that being said, we have come to the end of another episode of No Niche Zone, the podcast about everything. You can follow us across all platforms at No Niche Zone Pod. You can subscribe to our YouTube, our Discord. We are on all of the platforms. And you can also follow me personally at Pris the Goddess across all platforms. And with that being said, we'll see you next time.